Hello, dear. I see you all dressed up. Well, change of plans. I sort of have something new to show you. Now, you'll think it's a little weird and a little, well, incomprehensible for what I want to show you. But I assure you that what we're gonna do is going to be very unique, very interesting, and is going to take you by surprise, because normally a demon of my stature and ranking wouldn't dare to ever do something like this, but here we are. So, Husker has intrigued me with a new sort of card game. No, it's not Blackjack, not 21. No, it's not anything dealing with fancy old standard cards. There's this new card game, well, new to me, old to everyone else, called Magic the Gathering. Yes, I know it's a little weird. Apparently, that's what the surface people are doing nowadays. but I've sort of grasped the rules just a little bit. Now, these things, these card games, so they come with different sort of decks, and you have creatures and then mana. It's a whole thing I'll describe in a minute. But here you go. What we're playing is called a format called Commander, and it's sort of you need 100 cards, but one of them has to be your commander, so it's 99 cards plus your commander. We'll get into the nitty gritty of that bit, but how you play is simply following the rules of your cards. Now you may say, well, that can't be that simple. Well, you're right. There's layers and stuff like that. We'll get into that when it needs to be, but I have here Shelob, Child of Ungoliant. Now, they are a spider, just like Angel does. Well, it doesn't look exactly like Angel does, but we'll get to that later. But each creature type has what's called a subtype and a creature typing, stuff like that. So, for instance, this is a legendary creature, Spider Demon. Pretty cool. So it's legendary, which means you can only have one copy on the field at a time, unless some other rules apply to say that you can have more than one. But for now, I want to keep it simple. Each creature card has an effect, unless it does not. Some of them have what's called flavor text, which is a bit of story behind the card, with no other effects being on the card itself. But it is here, my commander, my deck, has what's called Death Touch, which means that any time my creature deals damage to a creature of yours, it dies instantaneously, no matter the power or toughness of your creature. Now, it also has the ability called Ward 2, which means that you have to pay an extra 2 if you want to target it with a spell or ability, which spells are anything that you can cast from your hand, or field, or graveyard, or library, which is what they call a deck in this game in particular. But Ward 2 means that they simply have to pay an extra 2 in order to target this creature. So, whenever someone says, I want to kill that thing, and I pay 4 mana, we'll get what mana is shortly, they have to pay an extra 2, especially if they don't have the mana to do so. You avoid your creature dying if it's a kill spell, or it being changed into something with something called an aura, which we'll get to that too. When it says, other spiders I control have Death Touch and Ward 2, whenever another creature dealt damage this turn by a spider I control dies, create a token that's a copy of that creature. It said it's a food artifact with sacrifices artifact, gain 3 life, and it loses all other card types. Artifacts. There are another card type in this game, as well as enchantments, as well as enchantment auras. We'll get to that soon. So, each card has what is called a mana cost, whether it is 0, 4, 2, 1. Everything has a cost, and in order to pay for these things, you got to have what is called mana, which is divvied up by certain land types that is made from the colors of your commander. For instance, Shelob, Child of the Ungoliant, is 4 mana plus a black and a green, which is known as a swamp and a forest. So in order for my deck to be legal and in a format, this is what Hush says anyways, they have to be specifically those colors. So every card in this deck, from top to bottom, besides the colorless artifacts, are black or green, or both between. So, yes, everything has a cost, and you use, for instance, Swamp and a Forest to pay for a card. Now, if something just has a regular number with 4 or 2 or 1 with no color identifying that it needs to be a green or black, you shall use any type of color to pay for those things. Now that is different when it comes to colorless commanders, because you can't have colors in colorless commanders, so therefore you must have what is called waste, which are another type of basic lands. So sometimes you have to get colorless lands, which lands, of course, are also called colorless because they have no mana value, nor are they a color type themselves. They just, what is called, tap for those colors. So, I have a few creatures here for examples. I have Grave Robber Spider, which is 3 and a green, Brood Weaver, which is 3 and a green, and Sporeweb Weaver, which is 2 and a green. As you can see, all these fall under my commander's colors and are perfectly legal to put into my deck, and they synergize, which means they work with my commander based off of their color and typing. Now, these here do not have what is called a subtype because they are just creatures. They are a creature spider. All of them are spiders. For instance, let's start with the Grave Robber Spider. It says it has a keyword called Reach. Reach means that if an opponent has a flying creature, normally, in certain circumstances, you cannot block a flying creature unless you have a flying creature yourself. It's just like actual combat. If you cannot reach someone who's above your head, you cannot block their oncoming attack. But these spiders, ooh, they have gusto. They are able to reach up high with their appendages and grab whatever's flying across the sky with their legs or grabbing them up mid-flight. And that's what they do. So reach means that they can block flying creatures. Now here comes the effects part of this card. For 3 and a black, this is known as a mana ability. We'll get to the abilities as well, but this is known as a mana ability. Grave Robber Spider gets +X until end of turn, where X is the number of creature cards in your graveyard. Activate this ability only once each turn. Now what it means by X is how much you're willing to put into the cost of something. So for instance, it says it gets X, where X is the number of creature cards, so it can be 2 or 3 or 15, as long as that is the replacement value for X. So how many creatures are in your graveyard is what X is. So what we do from there is we see, okay, there's 15 cards in my graveyard, which means that Grave Robber Spiders, for 4 mana, 3 and a black, can become a 15-19 because it is a 2 and a 4. Which is relatively amazing. Very strong for a card indeed. Now I want to move on to the Brood Weaver. It also has Reach, as well as described earlier. This has an effect that isn't a mana ability. This is known as a static ability. No, triggered ability actually. When Brood Weaver dies, create a 1/2 green spider creature token with Reach. Now what this means is when it dies, this effect will trigger unless something stops it. When it dies, it creates a 1/2 green spider to replace it. Meaning you don't really lose a creature, and you gain 1 back. Isn't that amazing? You lose the gain. Pretty annoying, actually. Pretty annoying. Like some of those pesky overlords I took over. Now, we're on to Sporeweb Weaver. It has Reach and Hexproof from blue. Now, what Hexproof means is that your creature can't be the target of spells and abilities your opponents control. Which means that If there's anyone playing blue, which is island colors, they won't be able to use abilities or spells to remove this creature from your board. Very interesting, correct? Now it has an ability. Whenever it is dealt damage, you gain a life and create a 1/1 green sapling creature token. Now this can be a combo piece. You can use something to give it indestructible and run into your opponents to force them to block or take damage. And if they block, well, you make a sapling creature for each one of those damages that hits him. So if someone hits you for 15, guess what? You're making 15 saplings. Pretty neat, pretty good way to make a huge wall of creatures and have your opponents begging for you not to kill them. Of course, I always go in for the kill when I have to. Now let me see here. Let me just dig through my deck here. Husker helped me build mine, explain all the rules to me, and I appreciate his enthusiasm in teaching me this. He put it in a way that I retain the information in order to, well, teach you how to play the game. So let me just look through here. Alright, I'm taking out a few of these, well, a card type of each one. Alrighty. So, I have gotten a few cards out of here that could showcase some more of the combos this deck can hold and what Magic has in store for you. So now, we're on to our subtypes of cards I didn't speak of, which are artifact equipments, artifact creatures, enchantments, sorceries, instants, and more. We're going to start off with artifacts and what they're about. So artifacts are things that you can tap mana for, or tap themselves to generate mana or abilities. For instance, we're going to start with a creature called Academy Manufacturer. It says if you will create a clue, food, or treasure token, instead create one of each. This is a neat ramp mechanic. Ramping is a term known for accelerating above your opponents. Getting land faster or mana. Getting counters faster. We'll get on to those. Stuff like that. But this one, so for instance, a card called Peregrine Took, for instance, says anytime a token would be created, you create a food token to go along with it. And since Academy Manufacturer says if you would create a clue, food, or treasure token, create one of each, you could make a lot of tokens, which are a lot of artifacts, to, as they use for the terms, sack and get their abilities. Very useful in the games for accelerating and hitting opponents hard if you have red, green, or other type of combinations of colors. Very fantastic. That's the creature power. Now we're going on to the artifact equipment. Skull Clamp. Yes, one of my favorite things to use in this deck. It's absolutely wonderful. It's an artifact equipment for 1 mana, colorless, which means you can use anything to tap for it. And the equip cost, as all equipments have, is 1. So, this says equipped creature gets +1/-1, and whenever equipped creature dies, draw 2 cards. Well, if I have something to make rats, which rats are 1/1, I could attach this to a rat to have it lose 1 toughness. In this game, whenever your toughness hits 0, your creature dies. Same thing with sacrificing, it's also a dying action. So whenever that rat would die, I would draw 2 cards. Very efficient, very effective, and card draw is important in a game like this. Now we're going on to enchantments. Enchantments are permanents that stay on your field and have wacky, very wacky effects. So for instance, this is called Knight of Sweet's Revenge. It says it's a 3-cost, 1 green or forest enchantment, which means 4 mana in total, 1 being a green has to be green. Now, it says, when Knight of Sweet's Revenge enters the battlefield, create a food token. It's an artifact with tap for 2, sacrificing, and gain 3 life. It says foods you control have tap and add a green. Meaning that my food tokens that I now generate can tap for green mana. Which is great, especially when combined with Academy Manufacturer with its ability to create tokens of 3 kinds. Then it says for 5 and 2 greens, yes, some effects can be very high up in cost. Sacrifice Knight of Sweet's Revenge. Creatures you control get X until end of turn, where X is the number of foods you control, activate only as a sorcery. Here we are implementing X as the number of foods I have, so that can be, well, as much as 3 to infinite. Because in this game, you can actually go what is called infinite. But we won't get into that here. You'll discover that by yourself. But yes, you sacrifice it and all creatures on your field to get that much power. Very powerful indeed. Then you have things like this. This is primarily in green. Rampant Growth. It's 1 and a green. Search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle. Very effective. Very, very effective, because this is how you generate your lands, get your lands in, to be able to play bigger creatures before your opponents can respond, or before your opponents in general. And then you have things called Instants. This is a very protective spell, very infamous for what it does. The only other one that's just as famous is called Darkness, but that's in Swamp. This is called Fog. Those who played the game will definitely know what Fog does and what it is. But it is a 1 green instant card, and all it says is prevent all damage that will be dealt this turn. Oh, and it's our first flavor text card. Flavor text means it has a bit of a story, a quote from a character from Magic the Gathering, or just a little bit of banter on the card. This says, I fear no army or beast, but only the morning fog. Our assault can survive everything else. Lord Hilneth. But that is a character from Magic the Gathering itself, so that's pretty cool. We got a little lore on the cards. Now that we have established some of the cards that we have in here, I know you're probably wondering, where's the enchantment aura that I spoke of? Where's the nitty gritty? Well, here's the thing. I want you to discover some of these things yourself as well. I can only describe so much. I'm a newbie at the game. I'm only relaying what Husker taught me. But this is how you attack and, well, win the game. The object of the game itself is to lower your opponent's life to 0 and win. Whether it's aggressively or through non-combat damage, which you can do by burning your opponents, making them take damage for drawing, blowing the creatures up while they take the damage from it. There's a lot of ways to win in Magic the Gathering, and a popular one is called milling, when you take cards from your opponent's deck or library, and you make them put it into the graveyard. Very effective, because in this game, if you run out of cards, you lose. So it's always important to have a way to shuffle your stuff back into your deck. Especially if we're going against blue players. Now, whenever you want to attack, per se, one, you have to make sure that none of your creatures have what is called Summoning Sickness. When a creature is played, unless it has a word called Haste, important keyword, you cannot attack with a creature as soon as it comes into play, unless it says so. Effects and timing are everything in this game. Especially when responding to state-based actions or to an opponent's creature hitting the field. You must wait. Now, whenever you're ready to attack your opponent, you do what is called declaring attackers. Now, you cannot just go, I attack with this creature, and then go, okay, and then attack with the other one. Nope, this isn't Yu-Gi-Oh! That's not how that works. You must declare all attackers at once. When you declare all your attackers, it is now your opponent's turn to establish blockers. Once they have chosen who to block or who not to block, they can choose not to block as well. You then do what is called damage phase, and creatures die, effects happen, all sorts of crazy shenanigans. And you deal damage to your opponent, or something happens and all your creatures get destroyed because your opponent has a really strong card in their hand that does so. The game is very magnificent, I tell you. It's amazing what this game holds, and it's fantastic, really. Now, well, there's a lot of things I can keep going on about, but that would be great for another episode, wouldn't it? I think in the next episode we'll discuss attacking and defending, and what could be in between. So, with that being said, I hope that I sort of gave you a introduction to this that you enjoyed. Now, here's the deck. Here's mine. How about we play around, Got a D20? Set your life to 40 and let's get playing. Nope, that's a mulligan.